Trials, and more trials. Accountability is right. The New York federal judge presiding over Jean Carroll's civil rape and defamation trial, Judge Lewis Kaplan, denied Donald Trump's request to adjourn and delay trial in a scathing order. Trial is set for April 25th, and it ain't moving. Also, Dominion's $1.6 billion defamation trial against Fox is set to start on Tuesday. It's already in jury selection. There were some rumors of settlement talks, but it doesn't look like a settlement has been reached, at least as of the time of this recording. So we are going to trial. Dominion is ready to expose Fox's disinformation. And if I just may, Dominion, don't settle this case. We want to see that trial. Don't settle it. Please don't do it. Don't do it. From real courtrooms to the performative fascist hearings led by MAGA Republicans in the House of Representatives, which are essentially just make a complete mockery of those proceedings. Jim Jordan and his band of MAGA Republicans in the Judiciary Committee took their right-wing extremist tour where they really weren't wanted at all in New York City, where they held what they called a field trip hearing to try to interfere with the Manhattan District Attorney's criminal case against Donald Trump. And so they basically just arrived in New York City where they weren't invited and just said a bunch of really horrible things about the city. It was completely disgusting, but again, it backfired. And speaking of fascism and things backfiring, Ron DeSantis signed into law an almost total abortion ban in Florida. And DeSantis also said that he will begin government inspections of Disney World to try and interfere with their operations. And he's also now threatened to build a new state prison near Disney World. On the other hand, MeidasTouch did an incredible interview with Pennsylvania's pro-democracy governor, Josh Shapiro, who demonstrated what real leadership and what real freedom looks like. And he called out Ron DeSantis. It was an incredible interview. And Brett, you did a really, really good job. A lot of comments saying Brett really crushed it. And Brett and Jordy, did you see that NRA convention in Indianapolis, right, where the MAGA Republicans, they were like bragging about how they were getting their 2-year-old grandkids rifles, and they called for the abolition of the FBI? Folks, it's just not normal in MAGA Republican world today. It ain't normal at all. And speaking of which, another lowlight today, Kevin McCarthy thought it was a good idea to go to New York Stock Exchange and go to Wall Street and brag about his refusal to pass a clean debt ceiling, because I think Kevin McCarthy realized that the markets love when Republicans hold our economy and full faith and credit hostage so that they could go out and attack Mr. Potato Head, the green M&Ms, and the woke. That's really what Wall Street likes to hear. This and more here on the MeidasTouch Podcast. I'm Ben Meiselas, joined by Brett and Jordy. Great point, right? That just shows you Kevin McCarthy's judgment. He's like, let me talk about how I'm going to destroy America's economy. Where should I do this? Wall Street. Wall Street is where.
Wall Street doesn't care. Wall Street doesn't care about red or blue. All they care about is the green.
And you know what Wall Street honestly wants less than anything? Wall Street does not want to see a government official on the stock exchange, especially one that is speaking about how he plans to collapse the global economy with his actions and how he refuses to budge on collapsing the global economy. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. But guys, it's a day that ends in Y. So it's another day of Republican Rake Steppers. We saw it in full force today, and we are going to get into it. They toss that rake. They go, check out the rake. It's flying, man. I threw that rake quite far. Oh no, I stepped on it. It hit me out. I actually hit myself in the face. It kind of hurt a little bit. I got to learn to act, not actually to smack myself in the face. But
No,
these Republican rakes, I think we need a theme song. If anybody out there writes little jingles or something, you know, Republican Rake Stepper. We need
that was
something.
the same tone I was going to go. Republican Rake Steppers.
Yeah, we need something, but we're going to get into it. The good news about all these is that the American public gets to see exactly what these Republicans are doing with our money, with our time, with all of our resources, and it's on full display. And the weaponization of the government is in full effect, and it shows, you know, they could be doing anything with their time. Remember, they could be protecting our kids. They could be helping protect Social Security, but they have decided to do one thing. They've decided that they're going to spend their time and our money protecting Donald Trump, and it is an absolute disgrace. Jordy, my man, how are you today? Great to see you as always.
Great to see you, brothers. Great to see you, Midas Mighty. I'm not going to lie. I had a rough one today, but I knew that we were going to do the show. And instantly, once that clicked in, I'm like, oh, I'm all good. We're going to be hanging out with the brothers. We're going to be hanging out with the Midas Mighty. I'm ready for this.
You got to glow, Jordy. You got to glow.
Oh, thank you.
You're looking good.
Yeah, it seems like it was a great day for you. I don't know what you're talking about. All right, so let's start in Manhattan, right? Because there were these two events taking place, right? Kevin McCarthy goes to the New York Stock Exchange, and then MAGA Republican Jim Jordan holds these performative hearings where he is just lying about New York City. Meanwhile, the crime rate in places like Kevin McCarthy's district in Bakersfield is far higher than it is in New York City. In places like Jim Jordan's own congressional district, the crime is multiples of what it is in New York City. But let's start with New York Stock Exchange today, where Kevin McCarthy made this appearance. So you may recall back in early February, after Kevin McCarthy made this trip to the White House, he had said that he was going to negotiate with Biden, that he was going to provide his own budget, right? Because President Biden put forward his budget. By the way, President Biden has already cut the deficit by a significant amount, whereas Donald Trump increased the deficit by trillions of dollars. So those are just facts. I know the MAGA Republicans don't like facts and data, but the facts are that Biden has decreased the deficit by trillions and Trump increased the deficit by trillions. But McCarthy, even though he says, I'm not going to pass a clean debt ceiling bill, despite the fact that in the past, clean debt ceiling bills have always been passed, right? So this is an incredibly unprecedented thing to tie the passage of raising the debt ceiling, which deals with paying the past bills. It's not forward looking, right? You have to raise the debt ceiling to pay for the debt in the past. And 25% of that comes from Donald Trump. And in the past, even though Democrats actually abhorred Donald Trump's budget, Democrats weren't like, we're not going to increase the debt ceiling because we hate your budget. The Democrats increased the debt ceiling. It's that simple. But McCarthy's the one says, I am not going to pass a clean debt ceiling so long as I'm speaker and so long as Republicans control the House. So Biden very sensibly goes, okay, well, here is my budget. So can you show me your budget so we can compare, and let me see the areas that you want to cut? Because you've now said, after I called you out at the State of the Union, that you are not going to cut Social Security and you're not going to cut Medicare, even though that was your intention. But I called you out and you said you weren't. So what is it that you're cutting? May I see, please? And McCarthy's like, No, I'm not going to show you. Why would I show it to you? You should just know. How dare you? And then McCarthy goes on this TV tour in Wall Street, and McCarthy does this really weird voice. I can't explain.
It's like a Don Jr. kind of move, right?
Fake voice. It's a total fake.
I've told you guys why they speak the way they speak, and they have these weird voices because every time they talk, their soul just continues to leave their body.
I believe
It definitely is, and you can tell just how phony he is, that like he rehearses this voice in the mirror, when he rehearses this like stupid line that he talks about. He's like, so when your kids ask you that they want more money that they can spend on their credit card, are you just going to raise their limit? Are you just going to raise it? And it's like, why are you giving this analogy to children and credit cards? Like,
it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. And stop trying to destroy our economy. And so he used that like rehearsed line, and he was called out, when he was on CNBC. Do we have this clip of McCarthy being called out? Let's play this clip.
1 second, let me find it.
Brad.
Think about it. A debt ceiling is like giving your child a credit card, and they charge the limit all the way up. Would you just raise the limit? No, you would sit down.
Well, if it meant playing with America's standing and full faith and credit of U.S. government debt, I feel like you can deal with the spending in other ways, which is totally legitimate.
So if you just raise the debt ceiling, do you think $31 trillion of debt? The CBO has come out in the next 10 years. Do you know we'll pay 10.5?
You did it 3 times in the Trump administration.
As we did economic changes. We never raised the debt ceiling by itself.
But the tax cuts, that was like $2 trillion deficit.
Okay, can we just say, he said, as we did economic changes. Okay, he's just putting a word salad together. What is, as we did economic changes? What are you talking about? You increase the deficit by trillions and trillions of dollars. So not only
good on
did
Sarah
you
Eisen
raise-
at CNBC for calling it out like right away. Oh, your economic changes? You mean the tax cuts, which destroyed the deficit? Those economic changes? That's what you're talking about right now? I mean, good on her for calling them out.
Absolutely.
And then
Absolutely,
there's the
and
other
I'll give
moment
you one better here too. So with this channel, with the CNBC channel, so my father-in-law, he only watches CNBC. It's very funny. I love the guy, amazing guy, but he's only watching CNBC. So every time I go and visit, he's watching CNBC, and so I, of course, watch CNBC a lot then. And every time we're on this channel, those hosts, they genuinely don't care about red or blue. They actually only care about green, and they'll justify any of their positions if it makes them look like they're smarter with where the market's going to go. And so McCarthy's showing up in this area, like he thought he was probably on some home turf type shit, but absolutely not. They could care less about this guy who's trying to just derail the entire market. They just want green. They just want to make sure everything's moving in the right way. So that was a very funny, totally Rake Stepper move right there by McCarthy, even going on that channel thinking it's home turf.
I like the way you frame that home turf type shit. That's what he thought.
That's how
So this is Kevin McCarthy. This is one of the speeches that he was giving. He gave a speech to a group of people on the stock exchange. It's like no one wants you there, Kevin McCarthy, talking about how you intend to tank the economy, and that you are holding the economy hostage. Like perhaps in your kind of Fox bubble that you live in and your MAGA Republican echo chamber, like these talking points make sense to you, but like the people on Wall Street know what the debt ceiling is, okay? The people on Wall Street who you're giving analogies about credit card debt, they understand the way debt works, right? And people on Wall Street, they juggle a lot of debt and they understand how you have to pay bills and just how that works generally. Brett?
Yeah, I don't, because if you even break down the analogy, first off, it's the dumbest analogy. You cannot compare household finances to a government budget. It's just nonsensical to begin with. But let's follow his analogy just for a second for the sake of argument. Who is the teenager who you're giving the credit card to? You, Kevin McCarthy? Like, who's the one who ran up the debt here? Kevin McCarthy and Donald Trump ran up the debt. So it's actually like Kevin McCarthy handed President Biden a card that was already at its limit. And now that bill is due to be paid. And Kevin McCarthy's going, I'm not going to pay my bills. And he's trying to say, isn't it responsible to up the limit? No, it's responsible if you have a full credit card bill to pay the credit card off. You don't get to say, you know what, I'm not going to pay it off. Actually, I'm just going to not pay it off this time unless you make concessions to me. That's not how a credit card bill even works. So even following his dumb analogy, this makes no sense whatsoever, especially when how Sarah Eisen called him out. You did this 3 times under Trump. You never made it an issue. once. You added trillions of dollars to the deficit. You never once brought up the debt or deficit while Donald Trump was president. Not once. So it's all performative BS. And you are willing to sink not just the U.S. economy, but you are willing to sink the global economy over this. And I want to be clear. If Kevin McCarthy goes ahead and continues to play chicken with the Biden administration and refuses to nudge on this, he will collapse the global economy. And it will be the Republican Party's fault when that happens. And they're making a cynical play for it that people will blame it on Biden. But it didn't work when they tried it under Obama, and it's not going to work this time either.
And here's the thing, like, we can have an intelligible conversation about budget priorities, right? That is fine. Biden has put forward his budget. You in the House of Representatives can either put forth your own budget or talk about where you think the priorities are. We could have debates about that. We could have these debates in public hearings. That's fine. But what you are saying is something that is completely unrelated to that. You are now creating, the MAGA Republicans are now creating a precondition that doesn't exist. These are two separate concepts. You need to raise the debt ceiling to pay the past debt, right? Very simple concept. You could separately have a conversation and say, okay, in the past, were we as fiscally disciplined as we should have been? As part of that conversation, we should acknowledge that the person who was the most fiscally undisciplined has been the Republicans and Donald Trump. But fine, we could have that conversation about how we could do better collectively to reduce our deficit going forward. But that has nothing to do with raising the debt ceiling. And McCarthy knows it. But because these MAGA Republicans are not just professional rake steppers, but they frankly want to torch the country in every single way, from the military to the economy to, internal, to they want to abolish the FBI. They want to destroy the courts. They want to control women's bodies. You look at everything that they're doing. It is this dystopian nightmare. I mean, truly, if you let the Republicans have their way, America would look like worse than the Taliban in Afghanistan. That's kind of what it would look like, and perhaps even worse.
And they're doing like all of it to own the libs. Like I saw an article the other day because we were mentioned in it, and it was by some right-wing website. I don't have a screenshot right now, but it was about Ron DeSantis signing into law the near total 6-week abortion ban in Florida. And the headline from this right-wing publication was like, liberals lose their minds and cry tears after Ron DeSantis signs a powerful abortion ban. It's like, is your whole ideology is just owning the libs? Like, there are actual lives at stake. Right. In every aspect of governing. They don't govern. They are trying to own the libs. We're dealing with a bunch of Twitter trolls, but they're in the government, and they think their full-time job is to be a Twitter troll. And by the way, it's Kevin McCarthy who's the one who's made this about the budget, even though this debt ceiling fights are not forward-looking fights. They're about paying your past bills. The whole budget argument in general doesn't even make any sense in this respect. But Kevin McCarthy trying to make it about the budget. And so President Biden goes, okay, I got my budget. Now show me yours. I'm showing you mine. You show me yours. Kevin, where's your budget? Where is it, buddy? Kevin has not shown the budget yet because he knows that anything that he shows will be taking away money from the Americans who need it the most. He knows now that he can't touch Social Security or Medicare, but he'll probably try to target Medicaid. He'll try to target SNAP. He's going to try to target all these other programs. And he knows once he puts that budget out there into the world, they're going to get crushed because the American people actually like those benefits and they want to help the people who need help the most in this country. And then he has the nerve in the same breath when he's asked about President Biden's budget and why he hasn't presented his budget. He goes, this isn't about the budget. Why? I don't even know. Like, why are you bringing up the budget? Because you brought up the budget. Like, you made this about the budget. And now you're trying to make it seem like it's not about the budget. I mean, listen, he also gave this weird speech today at the New York Stock Exchange where he kind of did like a Biden impression. And he was like, I wish I had the old Biden back, the old reasonable, sensible Biden back. And he uses this talking point about like, why is this about the budget in this clip? I'll play this and then we're done with McCarthy for now.
To again quote then Vice President Biden, he said, you can't govern without negotiating.
What changed, Mr. President? I agree with the former sensible Joe Biden.
I forgot that happened in the clip. Like one person claps, and even Kevin seems like shocked by the clap that happens. But yeah, I think it was in another moment where he was talking about the budget, and he was like, I don't know, why does this keep coming back to the budget? Because you made it about the budget. That's why it's coming. And you should just pay the bills. That's what we do in this country. We pay the bills.
And he gives this speech, and I don't know if he's trying to, use these kind of like rhetorical skills of like he's doing an act, and it's really cringy to watch. Like, I don't know if he's trying to if he thinks he sounds like an Obama, right? Or if he thinks
he thinks he's like a rock star.
He thinks he sounds great. I just want to let you know, it's like, what the hell was that I'm watching?
You know what this is? All these MAGA Republicans, the Kevin McCarthy, it's like, you guys remember American Idol, when the person who would get up there and sing just really poorly because no one in their whole lives ever told them, hey, you're actually not a great singer. This is what's happening with the Republican Party. Anytime they go off of Fox News, anytime they leave their bubble, they get embarrassed. They get humiliated because they're just propped up by this weird MAGAverse. Oh, you're so right, Kevin. Oh, yes. Oh, Tucker, chops. Yeah, Tucker.
You're so talented.
You're so talented. You're so smart. And then they go into the real world and they're like, yeah, it's a no for me, dog. That's what it is.
Are you saying Republicans are the William Hung of politicians? No offense, William. She Bangs was a great performance. Not gonna hate.
And by the way, you compare that to President Biden. Did you see the rock star welcome that he received in Ireland? And this clip has gone viral. We can't play the sound because of music copyrights, but
such a shame too.
He came out with the Dropkick Murphy, but can I do it?
And our video was taken down. No, I'm just kidding. It was really just an unbelievable reception, and it cuts right through. Also, we're playing the clip right now for the people watching.
They got it based on the song that we were singing.
Yeah, no, it's pretty epic. Dropkick Murphy.
Biden and any everybody's going crazy. Everyone's
going crazy. Like it's a massive audience in Ireland, everybody waving Irish flags, American flags, everybody from young children to adults, happy, arms like fist pumping in the air, high energy, just an incredible reception. And it shows, when we talk about America standing in the world, then you have Trump being like, we're the embarrassment of the world. No, they laughed at you when you went around. The places where you got positive receptions were when you went to places like Saudi Arabia and they did like weird performative dances with you, or North Korea. But you did not get that reception in places like Ireland or places or other allies. And that speaks volumes to me, and it should speak volumes to the rest of the country. There's no denying the impact that President Biden had. When you see that clip, when you hear the music, when you see the passion, when you see the energy in that crowd, that's what we want America to be. That's my vision of America.
Yeah, and Biden talked about our nation's shared present, past, and future. I think we could play this one without any copyright violations. I don't think there's a Dropkick Murphy song on this one.
Yeah. Only 200 years ago, the bricks touched by my great-great-great-grandfather, and his hands still hold up this soaring nave and hold it aloft. Like the Irish-American story itself, it's a testament to our shared past, present, and our future. My friends, people of Mayo, this is a moment to recommit our hearts, our minds, our ardent souls to the march of progress, to lay the foundations brick by brick by brick for a better future for our kids and our grandkids.
When you compare, it's the perfect time to play that video, right, on this episode, right? Because when you compare Kevin McCarthy's just BS performative nonsense at the New York Stock Exchange, again, just total and absolute trash. And on the other hand, you got President Biden, who is giving this incredible international speech. He's spending his time bringing nations together, where the MAGA Republicans are spending their time sending congressional delegations to sing songs with the J6 Choir, a band made up of terrorists who invaded the Capitol building. That is where the MAGA Republicans, they take over the House of Representatives, go, Where do you want to send your first congressional delegation? We want to yell, "Let's go, Brandon," with the J6 choir. It's like, are you kidding me? And then the media is like, the conservative trip to the prison to visit the individuals accused of. No, they're going to prisons to sing songs with the terrorists who invaded the Capitol. How weird is it that they have a J6 they have a J6 choir? I can't get over
unbelievable.
that. I'm going to bring that up on every episode, but I still can't get over the fact.
You have to. I mean, you have to remind.
Let me do the rant. I'm going to hit you. I can't get over the fact that the J6 terrorists have created a band called the J6 Choir, which sings songs with the Republican Party. Sorry, Brett.
No, I mean, point taken, and I'm glad you got that out. But imagine for 1 second, Biden's in that speech, and he's like, "and our shared values that we have between our nations." And the prosecutor warthog, Jack Smith, and
he's a warthog.
The prosecutor, and let me tell you about Horseface. Oh, Horseface. Oh, what
we could maybe catch it during a break. Do you have the warthog post?
I don't think I have the warthog.
Oh, we got to find the warthog post in a bit. Okay, but compare this though. Compare what Biden just said to South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem at this NRA convention in Indianapolis. You know what? No. I'll make a more direct comparison. I want to go to Noem, but first compare what you just saw President Biden say with what Donald Trump said at the NRA convention in Indianapolis, where he talks about how you can't say the N-word, okay? I want you to compare Biden with Donald Trump's speech at the same time, okay? Play the Trump speech.
Most dangerous time in the history of our country because of the power of weaponry. And I'm not talking about rifles now. You know what I'm talking about. The N-word. Can't use the N-word. 2 N-words you can't use. You can't use the nuclear word.
Okay, and now that's what he's saying. This is from the NRA convention in Indianapolis. This is South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem about her 2-year-old granddaughter who already has a shotgun. Play this clip.
Little Miss Addie, who is almost 2, and Branch, who's just a few months old, they have brought us so much joy. They brought us purpose. Now Addie, who, soon will need them, I want to reassure you, she already has a shotgun and she already has a rifle.
I can assure you, in case any of you were worried and thought otherwise, I want to assure you that my 2-year-old granddaughter, that she does have a rifle, she does have a shotgun, and when we bring her to nursery school, we only make sure she goes to a nursery school with other children who bring their shotguns and their rifles and their ARs to the nursery school. So, I mean, okay, this is Vivek Ramaswamy, who is, he's a big influencer in the MAGA Republican world right now. He's running for president, and here was his big call in front of everyone. Play this one.
I've also said that we need to go further. When you have an agency like that FBI that told Martin Luther King he couldn't have that concealed permit, that now tells conservatives effectively the same thing, politicizing the police state against them, you can't reform that from the top down. That is why I've said what you're not supposed to say, but I'm saying it tonight. I will say it again. We will shut down the FBI and replace it with a police apparatus that actually respects the law instead of making it up.
I mean, total maniacs.
Absolutely, just complete lunatics.
I mean, just maniacs.
And by the way, the legacy media will cover this and just say, and there was this NRA convention where the conservatives spoke and they got off their talking points and they said X, Y, and Z, and that was Sunday.
Well,
and they won't dig into this.
It's a good point because I actually saw the local ABC coverage in Indiana about it. I don't have the clip right now, but the way they covered the event is they said, and Donald Trump came by the NRA convention today to talk about protecting the Second Amendment. And they played like one clip of Donald Trump that said, and I will always protect your Second Amendment rights. and other speakers included at the for protecting gun owners. I was like, that's how they covered this event. I mean, they spent the whole event talking about defunding the FBI, talking about 2-year-olds having weapons of war. They spent the whole event just completely spreading hate speech about transgender people. They spent the whole thing threatening like Democratic officials. It's a deranged, cultish, weird, bizarre, terroristic event, if I'm being honest. Then you're going to cover it as Donald Trump rolled into town to talk about how he's going to protect your Second Amendment rights. Let's play this very short clip. And wasn't that great? That's a patriot right there. And on to the next news. And that's how they're covering this stuff. And it's a real problem when that's what's being beamed into people's homes every night.
Pence was booed. That was kind of funny, though.
Hilarious.
Hilarious. You know, he was the governor of Indiana. Like, it was the state that he was the governor. So he spoke, and first they gave him like a really bad speaking time, like they made him like one of the first opening acts too. So they didn't even give him a prime time slot. And then he shows up and basically everyone boos him. And then I think one person kind of in a mocking way goes, "I love you," you know, and he's like, "I love you too," but everyone was booing. Here,
Pence's base.
NRA. I love you too. And welcome back to the Hoosier State.
Bro, you know, because there is no bottom, like most people would have some sense of like humiliation, right? Like if you have a shred of dignity, even the slightest shred, okay? Because if you even have the smallest shred of dignity, I'm not even asking you to actually have dignity, just like a fraction of a fraction,
like a cheese stick, and you rip it off.
Exactly, like a little, the size of one of those like little nerds. Like that's what it, you know, that shred of dignity. So imagine then somebody calls you, you know, tries to murder you, right? Calls people to murder you. And then your response to the person who murdered you is, well, I think they've been treated very unfairly because he's conservative and he's a Republican. And so therefore, I think that that this is a whole politicized witch hunt against him. It's like, okay, he tried to kill you, idiot. Like they tried to hang you. That was the plan. And, you know, but he goes on this self-flagellation tour and, you know, and just kind of keeps hitting himself over and over and over again. You know, I don't even know what, Jerry, to your point, his constituency is a group, is just like people who are cowards. Like that's the only possible constituency. The one other thing I want to show you about this NRA convention is the head of the NRA, Wayne LaPierre, who basically just like, his speech is basically extortion. And so he's just like, I want to let you know that if you hate guns as politicians, we're going to destroy you. We're going to destroy you. We don't care if, you know, all you TikTokers out there, we're going to destroy you. Here, play this clip of Wayne LaPierre.
I don't care how many billionaires, TikTok stars, or Hollywood airheads they've got. Hear this. Gun-hating politicians should never go to bed unafraid of what this association and all of our millions of members can do to their political careers.
You know, one thing I want to mention, though, about the NRA, because there's an analogy here that can be drawn with Donald Trump. Like, infrastructure-wise, the NRA is actually a very weak entity, right? Like, they've declared bankruptcy. The bankruptcy case has basically revealed that like Wayne LaPierre is a grifter, and you know he's been accused internally of misappropriating all of these funds, and that the NRA again is bankrupt. I mean, very similar to Donald Trump, right? And then one of the bankruptcy federal judges basically called out the NRA for running a sham bankruptcy in one of the venues. But they project these threats, right? The same way Donald Trump like just kind of threatens and threatens and threatens. And it's actually relatively easy to stand up to the NRA because, you know, it's all bark and no bite at the end of the day, unless you give the boogeyman power, right? And the MAGA Republicans, they continue because they have this like cult following mindset that just when someone's mean to them or someone yells at them or they write a mean tweet about them, you know, they go into this mode of like, all right, I guess we just got to do whatever you say, whatever you say, whatever you do. And they don't stand up to this nonsense. Like Wayne LaPierre's a freaking clown, like an utter clown grifter, you know, and obviously the analogy applies with Donald Trump, and all they have is empty threats. But for MAGA Republicans, they fall for the empty threats because they're very weak people. I don't know if you read this article in the New York Times about Jim Jordan. We're going to talk about these fake hearings these sham hearings that he's been holding. But like, these are weak people who are very compromised people to begin with. And so it is very easy for these weak losers to kind of commandeer them the way Donald Trump does and the way the NRA does with them. And you'll see like this Jim Jordan performative fascist nonsense in Manhattan on behalf of Donald Trump is like just the ultimate clown show. Like history's going to look back on that if the pro-democracy community stays strong and be like, these were disgraceful traitors. Large media networks aren't going to call them out, but we'll keep calling them out here on the MeidasTouch Network. And we got a lot more to the show where we're going to be calling them out. Let's take one quick break.
This is sponsored by Miracle Made Sheets. Now, whether you want to get more fit or be a better parent or get more done at work, there's one thing that will help, and that's better sleep. With Miracle Made Sheets, you can tap into the power of self-cooling temperature regulation, which has been shown to improve deep sleep quality by over 20%. Now, using silver-infused fabrics originally inspired by NASA, Miracle Made Sheets are thermoregulating and designed to keep you at the perfect temperature all night long, so you get better sleep every night. These sheets are infused with silver that prevent up to 99.7% of bacterial growth, leaving them to stay cleaner and fresh 3 times longer than other sheets. No more gross odors. Miracle Sheets are luxuriously comfortable without the high price tag of other luxury brands, and feel as nice, if not nicer, than bed sheets used from some of the 5-star hotels. Stop sleeping on bacteria. Clean sheets means less bacteria to clog your pores and fewer breakouts and other skin problems. Go to trymiracle.com/Meidas to try Miracle Made Sheets today. And with Mother's Day and Father's Day right around the corner, this is the perfect way to give someone you love the gift of better and more luxurious sleep. Save over 40% off and be sure to use our promo code Meidas at checkout to save even more and get 3 free towels. Miracle is so confident in their product that it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you'll get a full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/Meidas and use the code Meidas to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/Meidas to treat yourself.
And we are back live here on the MeidasTouch Podcast. During the break, some people text me just funny things, and someone sent me, they go, okay, while we were listening to you, Ben, talk about the importance of democracy and calling out this kind of fascist cosplay mess, they're like, Ben Shapiro's show is also going on. And they're like, you want to know what, I wouldn't call this our competition because he's such a loser, but this is what the MAGA Republican show is basically doing right now, led by Ben Shapiro. And this is what Ben Shapiro is talking about. The great suspicion is that in Frozen 4, they'll make Elsa a lesbian. If they do that, it is the end of Disney as a company. Predict it. You can write it down. It is April 17th. If they do that in Frozen 4, it will destroy Disney. That is what
first
is going
of all,
on.
I'm just going to come off the top and let everyone, there hasn't even been a Frozen 3. So first off, at least know the series before you start knocking at Ben Shapiro with your dumb attacks. How about that?
Wow, I didn't know you were such a good Frozen fan, Brad. That's impressive.
I mean, they're some of the most popular movies. I mean, I was like, it's not a trilogy.
Still impressive.
Last week, their big concern was the Mario movie and that the princess wasn't helpless enough. So that was a big initiative of the MAGA Republicans.
It's Schrodinger's woke, though, because it's once the movie did well, all of a sudden they were like, oh, it did well because the 2 leads were not white. I mean, the two leads were white. So it was actually an anti-woke movie. And they just like reveal themselves like what they actually mean by woke when they say things like that. So, okay. So exactly. Now I had a suspicion of what you meant when you said woke and then you said you wanted to get rid of woke. Now I know exactly what you mean. Thank you for clarifying.
I want to show what just a pro-democracy governor looks like, because we're going to talk about Jim Jordan. We're going to talk about all this MAGA madness. But Brett, you and I had the opportunity to interview Governor Josh Shapiro of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, who was, he is incredible, a total superstar. I was so... I thought you did a great interview with Governor Shapiro. But I want to show this moment where he talks about this whole idea of like the DeSantis and these GOP governors focusing a whole platform on woke. So let's play that portion of the interview.
From Ron DeSantis, for example, I know we keep bringing him up, but it feels like every other word of his mouth is woke, woke this, woke that. What do you make of these Republican governors who are so focused on the woke thing? And
they are so full of shit. And don't bleep me on that, because I'm serious. They're completely full of shit. These are the people that love to blame the woke left, love to have these battles, yet they're the ones in their states who are leading the charge to restrict people's rights and freedoms. I mean, it's absolutely outrageous. You know, if you're a corporation in Florida and you don't agree with the governor's freedom limiting policies, then he's going to take away your tax breaks. He's going to take away your ability to manufacture your product. He's going to take away your competitive advantage. That's anti-capitalism. It's anti-freedom, it's anti-democracy, it's things that we have fought against. And then to go around and couch it in those terms, they are full of shit. And I believe that the good people of Florida and Texas and Arkansas know better, and they need to rise up, they need to organize, and they need to defeat that type of extremism. And we sure as hell need to defeat it nationally if any of them ever get on a national ballot.
And to your point, when they're doing that, when they're so focused on these bullshit issues, to borrow phrases from you on
by the way, if you bleep me, you better bleep yourself.
This is unfiltered. This is the MeidasTouch Network. You go unfiltered, Governor, on this show. This is raw, unfiltered news and politics. But you see what happened, I mean, just now in Fort Lauderdale. You see the city underwater completely, and you saw Ron DeSantis completely in another state entirely in Ohio, talking about the same things. Woke. So you see that those distractions are not only ridiculous, but they have real life consequences when your constituents actually need you to be doing the work of governing.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's clearly not taking care of business in Florida. People are really struggling. I was back and forth with a dear friend this morning in Fort Lauderdale, Fred Gutenberg, who's been one of the great leaders on combating gun violence in our communities. And he's sending me photos of his son kayaking down the streets in, around the Fort Lauderdale area. People are really struggling and suffering right now. And he clearly doesn't have any plans to fix Florida or help Florida. And so he's running around with, with his message of restricting freedom across this country. And I think he'll be rejected. This is a guy without a particularly good political acumen. He went all in for my opponent in the last election, who suffered.
That worked great for him, huh?
Yeah. And I think he's also just a profoundly weak governor, and he's glass-jawed. And I think he is not going to survive this process well.
Profoundly weak, glass-jawed.
Glass-jawed's a good one.
Full of shit. No bleeps here.
I want every Democrat to study the way Governor Josh Shapiro messages and copy that, because it's perfect. You have to take back, and I said this to him, you have to take back what real patriotism means. You have to take back what real freedom means. And by the way, if you want to check out that full interview, the full interview is on our podcast feed, so make sure to listen to it. And it's also on YouTube. You could watch the full thing. Ooh. Such a great conversation from start to finish. And I'll just do a little aside before we move on. But Jordy, he had some took some pretty rough shots at you in your basketball game at the end of the interview. And I got to say, the tape begs to differ with his version of events, because Jordy, you beat him in that one-on-one game.
Tape don't lie. Tape don't lie, as we say in the basketball world.
But he had some strong words. But we also have that video on our YouTube channel of Jordy playing Josh in basketball. We might have
that
to do
was
a
crazy. That was so
point.
random and awesome. How cool. I bet a lot of our audience doesn't even know. Yeah, that the governor and I played one-on-one basketball during his campaign, raised money for the Greater Pittsburgh Community Food Bank. It was awesome.
But Shapiro was exactly right. These Republican governors are going ahead. They're all about restricting freedom, and they do it by wrapping themselves in the flag, speaking in front of a giant flag. They talk about freedom. They talk about liberty. They talk about the Constitution. They talk about the founders, and then they do everything that is completely opposite of all of that.
Yeah.
It is, and it's a common tactic used by authoritarians throughout history to use iconography, to use imagery, to use founding documents in support of something that is complete anathema to that thing. And that is what we are witnessing with this Republican Party. And it's so transparent, I know, to us and to the Meidas Mighty, but I think Josh Shapiro really distills it down to its essence. And we need to keep spreading the word on what they're truly doing here.
And by the way, that's a huge reason, this Republican Party, they're fake patriots, they're fake patriots. They cloak themselves in the American flag, and they, want to take away your rights in the other breath. It's a huge reason why I actually intentionally put the flag behind me when we do these podcasts on the simulcast, is because far too many right-wing podcasters and that entire section of MAGAverse, they've stolen the flag. And that's just BS. There aren't enough pro-democracy coalitions out there who are happy pro-democracy loving warriors that want to represent America in its fullest, because they feel like the flag has been weaponized against them. This is a huge reason.
I think one of the mistakes that Democrats made leading up to 2015, 2016 is that, Democrats felt you don't need to say we love the Constitution, or we don't need to say we love the flag. We don't need to say that because it should just be understood. And I think because Democrats want to avoid looking performative and just say, look at all the great work that we're doing, that should speak for itself, they ignored the language and the symbolism that is still profoundly important and which actually is congruent. It actually does mesh exactly with what the Democratic policies are. So Democrats, I think, made a mistake of not talking about freedom, of not talking about the flag, of not talking about patriotism, of not having these conversations. But then you can still kind of walk and chew gum at the same time, right? You can still have the important, serious conversations, but you shouldn't forget that it is important, I think, to take back the term patriot and to talk about patriotism in the right way, and to say, look, we love the country. We love freedom. And here's what freedom actually looks like. Freedom doesn't look like when Ron DeSantis at 12 p.m. at night signs into law a total abortion ban, where Ron DeSantis will now be the one making decisions over the bodies of women in Florida. It's Ron DeSantis' choice right now, not a woman's choice. Ron DeSantis gets to decide. And if you are a victim of rape or incest, guess what? You have to prove it before 15 weeks to Ron DeSantis now. And Ron DeSantis makes the decision. That's how Ron DeSantis wants to utilize government. Ron DeSantis will make the decisions for women. He thinks that he knows better. That's not freedom. That's not freedom. So in addition to opposing that, the way Governor Josh Shapiro says that's not freedom, that is not freedom. Absolutely, that's not freedom. And we need to call it out like that. It's not freedom when DeSantis basically spends all of his time, in addition to taking away the rights of women to control their bodies, he spends the rest of his time talking about woke and attacking the biggest employer in their state. And you notice what Shapiro did also, what Governor Shapiro also. He says that's not capitalism. You've got these MAGA Republicans who try to talk about capitalism. You're spending all of your hours attacking your largest employer in the state, that one of the employers that put Florida on the map in a big way, Disney World. And that's how you're spending your time here. Play this clip from earlier in the day where DeSantis, like a mobster, look at the way he threatens to put a state prison next to theme parks in Disney World. Let's play this clip.
one of the things they tried to do was put restrictive covenants on the land that the district owns. So if you look at this whole special district, Walt Disney Corporation obviously owns a lot of it, but the district owns other land. And, quite frankly, I wasn't even thinking about that land. This was not something that was really important one way or another. We just wanted them to live under the same rules, pay the debt, pay the taxes, all that stuff. Oh, but come to think of it, now people are like, well, what should we do with this land? And so, it's like, okay, people have said, maybe have another, maybe create a state park, maybe try to do more amusement parks. Someone even said, like, maybe you need another state prison. Who knows? I just think that the possibilities are endless. And so that is now going to be analyzed to see what would make the most sense.
Wouldn't it be a bad thing if all of a sudden a prison popped up right next to Epcot Center? Wouldn't that be a bad thing?
That's a nice theme park you have there. It'd be a shame if something happened to it, Disney.
Just think about this too, guys. He's spending his day giving a press conference attacking the largest private employer in his state, and not just the largest private employer in his state, like a company that is so representative of good things in America.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. Disney does some things that are not so great. So I don't want to make Disney out like it's the most perfect corporation ever, but it in general,
but it's an iconic
the joy that people give Disney, the joy that Disney gives people is generally a good thing. And he's spending his time attacking that in a public forum for the world to see.
We have Republicans constantly with the investigations into Donald Trump. The line they love to use is, if they could do this to Donald Trump, they could do this to you. And it doesn't apply at all in that respect. What if I commit crimes, someone's going to come after me for those crimes? Like, okay, sure. Yeah, that's how it's supposed to work. Everyone's supposed to be equal under the law. But that sentiment really does apply here to what DeSantis is doing. If Ron DeSantis could do this to Disney, one of the largest employers in the state of Florida, one of the most iconic and biggest American companies in general, international companies from America, from his state, if he could do this to Disney and bully them and use the full weight of the government, weaponizing the government against Disney, Jim Jordan, if you want to investigate something, actual weaponization, look here. If that's what he wants to do to Disney, guess what? He could do that to any mom and pop business around the state that disagrees with them. Just bully them into submission. And all these companies, guess what? They don't have the resources that Disney has to fight back, to outmaneuver Disney. And this is all because DeSantis got played. DeSantis got played. He got humiliated. He tried to pull one over on Disney. Disney had better attorneys. Disney had competent people working for him. Disney retained the control that they needed over the Reedy Creek district. And so DeSantis had to go, I wasn't even concerned about the land. I wasn't even concerned about that. But let me talk about, by the way,
that's a good DeSantis impression.
Not to get super petty, but DeSantis can't be president alone because of his voice. It's just a disaster. But that's another story. But he's it's like nails on a chalkboard.
And then Brett, you rewind even more. This whole battle started because Disney supported LGBTQ plus rights, right? The same way that, and by the way, not even in a ultra monumental way, at the bare minimum, they were just like, hey, we're against discrimination, right? They didn't even necessarily even go completely out of their way to have these sweeping initiatives. That's not what bothered DeSantis. They were just like, look, discrimination of being permitted against our employees, that's not a good look for us. So any policy that's going to encourage hate against LGBTQ plus, we're not with it. And DeSantis was like, how dare you? If I want to impose a government edict that we here in the freedom-loving state of Florida shall discriminate against the LGBTQ plus community, how dare you, private corporation? How dare you say that you don't want to discriminate? I am now going to control your land. That's what happened. That's how it all started with that.
And the cynical thing that the Republican Party is doing, and there have been some really good articles about this recently. I wish I remembered who wrote them. But this is all a coordinated effort by Republicans to find a new scapegoat to motivate their voters. And I think the Republican Party needs to be called out for their blatant bigotry on this more and more and more, because what happened was, after gay marriage became legalized, the Republican Party lost a major issue because same-sex couples were able to get married, and guess what? The world didn't end, okay? And the approval of Americans for same-sex marriage skyrocketed because everyone was like, oh, this is normal. If two people love each other, they should be able to get married. That's great. It's a beautiful thing. Most Americans believe that. So they had to find something else. And so they spent years and years and years kind of test kitchening things to try to figure out what was going to play with their base. And finally, they found a scapegoat the same way truly evil dictators find scapegoats throughout history. They found the transgender community, which makes up what? Less than 1% of the population. They found a defenseless group that they could just crap on all day, say the most hateful things about them, and they just don't have the numbers or the representation to fight back. And they act like they are the power center. They act like, oh, look at, and Donald Trump during the NRA speech, one of the things he kept going back to, and they support the transgender cult that wants to make your kids transgender. Like that, this is a line that they use, and they try to instill fear in people, but it's the same exact thing that dictators have done throughout history. Find a group that is a small percentage of the population, blame them for every single issue, and just replace transgender with Jewish, replace transgender with Black, replace transgender with any other group. And you shouldn't have to do that, but for the sake of the media, okay, do that. And now imagine saying the words that these Republicans are saying about transgender Americans here. It's absolutely hateful. It's despicable. It's what the worst human beings throughout history have done. And it's words that have led to serious actions like genocide and really despicable things. And so I think it's absolutely abhorrent that the Republican Party, their one motivating factor, and they say that this is their whole plan too, to capture the youth, is just to hate on transgender people, spread hate speech, threaten them. It's absolutely disgusting what we're seeing out there.
And they want to use the government to do this, right? They want to use their government resources to attack an already marginalized community, and find new cruel ways to go about doing that. Going back to what Governor Josh Shapiro said too, that's not freedom at all. To your point, Brett, that is what fascist dictators, authoritarians, people who have promoted genocide have done, in the past. And, the way you just called it out there is kind of a template of how it should be, discussed. I mean, you have, Democrats who are basically saying, government, this isn't an area for you. Stop telling us who to marry. Stop trying to control a woman's body. Stop trying to tell parents how they should raise their kids. Just get out of here. And it's the government saying, you know what? You can't. This is what the MAGA Republicans want to use government for, right? You can't read that book. We're going to take these books away from you. You can't do that with your body. We're going to tell you what you can do with your body. Parents, you can't do what you want with your children. We know. Ron DeSantis knows how to deal with this issue. Just go and ask Ron. Ron has the answers. And meanwhile, why they do that is because guess what, Ron? Your state is completely flooded. Guess what, Ron? People can't even buy insurance in your state because you've completely mangled any interactions with insurance companies there. Guess what, Ron? Teachers are fleeing your state and students are fleeing your state. Like, you are turning Florida into, you could put all the propaganda you want, and large media networks might want to paint a rosy picture of it, but it is actually, you're having devastating impacts on the state that for years and years and years, will be felt. And guess what, Ron? Every time there's an issue, then you have to come back and beg the federal government to bail you out. Because without the federal government and the resources they provide, the state would be completely underwater in more ways than one. And then speaking, Brett, of this kind of MAGA performative fascism.
Wait, sorry to cut you off mid-transition because you're doing it so beautifully. I just wanted to say this. Do you guys know why Ron DeSantis actually speaks the way he speaks? It's because he's got a glass jaw. Okay, Ben, go.
Glass jawed. Worth the interruption.
So going to these Republican sham hearings in New York. So the MAGA Republican Jim Jordan, who chairs the Judiciary Committee, took his sham hearings that he's been holding, some of the weirdest hearings in DC. He thought it would be a good idea to bring it to Manhattan, because he wanted to try to exploit crime victims to try to attack the Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg in order to interfere with the criminal case against Donald Trump. I just want to do a quick fact check right now, which is in a recent study, and you could follow the data. I know MAGA Republicans don't like data. They want to cherry pick. Here is a crime victim from New Jersey, and let's have the crime victim from New Jersey tell a story, and let's just say it's from New York. By the way, that's actually something
that actually happened.
That actually happened today. But they're like, let's ignore the fact that in red states, in states led by MAGA Republican governors, and specifically also within cities controlled by MAGA Republican leaders, crime is usually through the roof. Crime has never been higher in red states and actually down in blue states. And you want to talk about Manhattan, you want to talk about New York City. New York City is ranked as one of the top 5 safest big cities in America. Guess what happens though? Like in any city, there's going to be crime, and crime is bad. So if you want to pick incidents where people have become the victims of crime and share their stories, yes, they are always going to be
8.5 million people in New York. Something's going to happen occasionally.
And there's going to be horrific, sad stories, but you have to look at data. So if we want to look at the district, right in Jim Jordan's district, right next to Jim Jordan's district, like in Cleveland, it ranked as the 7th most dangerous city, right? But Jim Jordan is not going to hold any hearings in Cleveland or any hearings in his district. He's not going to hold a hearing in Kevin McCarthy's district, which is completely run by Republicans. The city council, the sheriff, everybody in Kevin McCarthy's district is Republican, and it's probably the least safe area in all of California. I know they like to, spread false stories and go, oh, the reason why this tech entrepreneur died in San Francisco, like they just like defame people, is because of, a random crime incident. No, it was actually like a corporate adversary who was arrested for the murder. But they lie about these incidents, and then they'll attack and defame these great American cities. And meanwhile, there's more crime in their own backyard. So I want to show you this. This is a Democratic Congress member, the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, Jerry Nadler, slamming Republicans during this hearing. This is, again, Democrat Jerry Nadler. Let's play this clip.
Now, we all grieve for the victims of violent crime here in Manhattan and everywhere. But it is shameful that the Republicans of this committee would use the pretext of violent crime as an excuse to play tourist in New York and bully the district attorney. And it is particularly disgraceful that they would use this pretext after doing nothing to stop the gun violence.
Pretty good. Pretty powerful words there. And I want to show you this next clip from David Cicilline, another Democrat. And I thought this is one of the most powerful moments of the hearing. And then I want to show you Dan Goldman and Schiff. These were 3 really, really, really important hearings. So before I play you this clip, though, let's just take one quick break. You're not going to want to go anywhere because these clips are powerful as can be. Let's play this quick break first.
And now let's take a quick break to talk about our next partner, Fume. Cold turkey, it may be great on sandwiches, but there's a better way to break your bad habits. We're not talking about some weird mind voodoo from your wacky neighbor or some sketchy message board. We're talking about our sponsor, Fume, and they look at the problem in a different way. Now, not everything in a bad habit is wrong. So instead of drastic, uncomfortable change, why not just remove the bad from your habit? Fume is an innovative, award-nominated device that does just that. Instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural. Instead of vapor, Fume uses flavored air. And instead of harmful chemicals, Fume uses all natural, delicious flavors. You get it. Instead of bad, fume is good. It's a habit you're free to enjoy and makes replacing your bad habit easy. Your fume comes with an adjustable airflow dial and is designed with movable parts and magnets for fidgeting, giving your fingers a lot to do, which is helpful for de-stressing and anxiety while breaking your habit. The first time I used fume, I was shocked at how flavorful and fresh it tasted. Now, it's easy to hold and perfectly balanced and quite honestly, extremely fun to fidget with. The real wood material and sleek design definitely classes it up, and I feel pretty darn cool holding it. Stopping is something we all put off because it's hard, but switching to fume is easy, enjoyable, and even fun. Fume has served over 100,000 customers and has thousands of success stories, and there's no reason that can't be you. Join Fume in accelerating humanity's breakup from destructive habits by picking up the Journey Pack today. Head to tryfume.com and use code MIDAS to save 10% off when you get the Journey Pack today. That's tryfum.com and use code MIDAS to save an additional 10% off your order today. And now let's take a quick break to talk about our next partner, Rhone. If you're like me, you understand the pains of finding out what to wear. Let's face it, most clothes are uncomfortable or too tight or never actually the size that you really are, and not to mention the annoyance of trying to put together a good outfit. And when you finally do have a good fit, you can only wear it for a few hours before you have an important meeting or dinner, and then you have to change. Everyone wants to dress their best and look good at all times because, frankly, it's a confidence booster. So here's the deal. Men's closets were due for a radical reinvention, and Rhone stepped up to the challenge. Rhone's commuter collection is the most comfortable, breathable, and flexible set of products known to man. And here's why. Rhone helps you get ready for any occasion with the commuter collection, which offers the world's most comfortable pants, dress shirts, quarter zips, and polos. You never have to worry about what to wear when you have the Rhone commuter collection. Rhone's comfortable 4-way stretch fabric provides breathability and flexibility that leaves you free to enjoy what life throws your way, from your commute to work to your 18 holes of golf. It's time to feel confident without the hassle. With Rhone's wrinkle release technology, wrinkles disappear as you stretch and wear the products. It's that easy. With the Gold Fusion anti-odor technology, you'll be smelling fresh and clean all day long. And on top of that, Rhone is 100% machine washable, so you can ditch the dry cleaner altogether. I absolutely love Rhone. This has truly become my go-to commuter fit. We're on the move a lot. Whether it's jumping from meeting to meeting or catching a flight or an important dinner, the Rhone commuter collection has never let me down. The versatility and overall comfort of the collection is undefeated. Even after I wear it all day, I still feel super fresh because of the Gold Fusion anti-odor technology. The commuter collection can get you through any workday and straight into whatever comes next. Head to Rhone.com/Midas and use promo code Midas to save 20% off your entire order. That's 20% off your entire order when you head to RHONE.com/Midas and use code Midas. It's time to find your corner office.
And
welcome.
we are,
Whoa,
easy, Jordy. We're
Easy,
live
Jordy,
on
we're
the
live.
air. Oh my gosh, Jordy showing off his Rhone gear. You can check out all of our sponsors. They're a huge help to keep the show going. Check them out. All the links in the description. Support our sponsors. It really helps the show. So back to the professional Rake Steppers. I got to work on it. We'll figure it out. Don't you worry. But
yeah. I was like, Jordy was like we were watching TV during the break. And the whole TV on back there. I was gonna like, were you trying to get
my flag went away for some reason? I don't know.
Yeah, all of a sudden I started seeing a TV show. I was like, you're gonna get us flagged for a copyright violation with the TV. A lot was going on during the break there for Jordy, but if you want to. The descriptions are in our YouTube link, so you can check them out.
Links are in the description.
Links are in the description. All right, David Cicilline, Democratic Congress member. This is one of the powerful moments where he goes, "Please spare me this performative outrage." Let's play this clip.
Yet my colleagues vote repeatedly against even the most common sense gun violence prevention measures. They vote against getting assault weapons off the streets, despite the previous assault weapons ban that drastically reduced gun violence. They vote against alerting people to active shooters. They vote against safe storage and red flag laws. They vote against community-based crime prevention programs. They vote against background checks. And the list goes on and on. And more than that, they brought us here today to attack a district attorney who has actually seen a decrease in violent crime during his tenure. All because he dared to hold Donald Trump accountable. So please spare me this suggestion that this is about a sincere interest in finding solutions to crime. This is about your agenda to earn the admiration and support and good wishes of the former President of the United States. But I, for one, would actually like to hear about some actual solutions to public safety, and particularly to gun violence in our communities.
Yeah, like, look, let's talk about the real issues here. And that's what I like about how the Democrats responded to this. I mean, first, call out the disinformation.
First, they showed up. They didn't just cede the floor to the Republicans.
Yeah. Democrats show up. You go to New York. You go, okay, they're doing this clown show, but we're not going to let them just get away with it and lie. 2, call them out on the disinformation. And then 3, remind American people what's really important here. And as Congressmember Cicilline said, look, if we want to truly address the issue of crime in cities, like, okay, let's have a real conversation about it. By the way, I would love to learn, and we could weigh strategies. We can see how Alvin Bragg strategies compare to Republican district attorney strategies, and we can have a real conversation. And by the way, I'm okay with the real debate. Like, just because Alvin Bragg's a Democrat doesn't mean I'm like, whatever he does, Alvin Bragg's always right. He may actually do things wrong. I'm sure he does. And by the way, when the Republicans say, abolish the FBI, by the way, do I think the FBI is perfect? No, not at all. I'm very critical of a lot of things the FBI does, and there can actually be real, genuine, meaningful conversations about reforming lots of institutions and entities. And by the way, going back to the beginning of the show, if you want to have a real, genuine conversation about spending and how we can reduce the deficit, bring it on. Let's do it. But don't do the performative, Jordy, to borrow your curse and to go from Shapiro, don't bring in the performative shit into the equation. You don't do the phony field trip in New York because you want to show what a great cult follower you are of Donald Trump and misrepresent the stats. If you want to have a real conversation about American spending, don't say, well, I'm not going to raise the debt ceiling unless you divine. I'm not even going to show you my own budget. We're not even going to have a meaningful conversation. But unless you telepathically, the same way Donald Trump telepathically apparently declassifies records, unless you telepathically negotiate with me, then I'm not going to raise the debt ceiling. And guess what? I'm going to Wall Street to let you know I'm going to tank the economy. And by the way, you better believe that Kevin McCarthy doing that in Wall Street was kind of another version of when Ron DeSantis was like, well, maybe I build a prison. When he was there in Wall Street, the message he was sending, I'm going to tank the economy. Look where I am. I'm going to tank that's why he did it. It was a very subtle mafia style threat. And that's why he did it in Wall Street, because he wanted to shake the markets. But again, and by the way, going to the FBI, you want to have an intelligible conversation about the FBI and American privacy issues. I'm okay with that. By the way, but let's not do it because you're upset that the FBI is investigating actual domestic terrorists. Don't act like, oh, this is just parents who wanted to express their free speech at school board meetings. That's not what the FBI is focused on. Okay, they're focused on individuals who threaten to freaking blow up the schools. Mm-hmm. That's terrorism. That's why they're focused there. So don't give me these BS conversations. I'm okay to have real conversations. By the way, again, you want to talk about social media being weaponized and whatever. If you want to have a real conversation about it, like, we can have real conversations, but don't act like President Biden was weaponizing it in October of 2020 when he wasn't the president of the United States because the campaign asked that Twitter take down photographs of Hunter Biden engaged in consensual sexual intercourse. Meanwhile, you have Donald Trump as the president, as the government, actually demanding that Twitter engage in conduct. So just if spare me the bullshit, in the words of Governor Josh Shapiro, spare me the bullshit. And when you watch what these MAGA Republicans do, it's a bunch of bullshit, and it works in their Fox echo chamber. And we're going to talk about the Fox defamation lawsuit, which seems to fortunately be going to trial and not going to be settling in a moment. But that works in their OAN world the same way propaganda works in North Korea. It's a potent tool that can actually be used, but I think Americans are onto it. I think Americans are like, okay, enough with this woke shit. Okay. Can you stop with the woke? Can you stop talking about Elsa from freaking Frozen? Can you stop with the freaking Mr. Potato Head bullshit? Can you stop with this stuff? Like I want to make sure that I've got a good paying job. Okay. I want to make sure I have health care, please. I want to make sure that I could afford prescription drugs and that the government's working to reduce prescription drug prices. Okay. I want equality. I don't want you, Ron DeSantis, to make decisions over the body of women, please. Can you freaking get away from that? And I think Americans by and large, overwhelmingly now. And I still think you got 20% and 25% that will take the propaganda, but I think Americans are like, enough of this crap.
No, I couldn't agree more. And let's not confuse these hearings for legitimate hearings. They're putting on a performance. They're putting on a play. These are Soviet style show trials that we are witnessing. And because guess what? They wouldn't be in New York if Alvin Bragg was not prosecuting Donald Trump. That's a fact. I don't think anybody in the world can deny that fact right there. These are all performative. It's all nonsense. It's all for them to further their own propaganda. They know that it's a lie. Good for the Democrats for showing up, for standing up to these people, but it's a disgrace and it's a waste of resources. Honestly, they should pay us back for all the resources. They should pay New York back for the resources that they used to put on these hearings and the security they needed. But like you said, Ben, if you wanted to do a hearing on weaponization of the government, first off, you're the ones right now weaponizing the government. You know who you could look into? You could look into Ron DeSantis and his mafia style threats against Disney. That's an example of weaponizing the government. If you want to look into it, you could look into Donald Trump and you could look at what Bill Barr did to weaponize the government. That is well documented. And even John Bolton, who worked in the administration, said, yeah, I witnessed it firsthand that there was weaponization in the government under Trump. So pull John Bolton in and ask him questions about how Bill Barr weaponized the government. Pull Michael Cohen in. Have Michael Cohen tell you how Bill Barr and Donald Trump weaponized the government. You could go back. I heard Joy Reid said this. You want to do a piece on, you want to do investigations on weaponizing the government? Let's talk about how the FBI targeted Martin Luther King back in the day. Let's talk about that. There are plenty of examples of the federal government being weaponized against the American people. There are plenty of examples of Republican governors weaponizing the government. But what these people are doing are absolute sham, Soviet-style show trials just designed to push their propaganda when the facts just don't back up anything that they are saying.
I couldn't agree more. Same thing. You want to have a conversation on guns. Okay, look, I think that there should be a common sense approach. I'm not saying I want to take away all of your guns. That's not what I'm saying at all. Responsible gun owners want responsible gun ownership. A responsible gun owner doesn't want hey, let's give, because a responsible gun owner knows the power of their weapon. They're not afraid that they won't pass a test that will allow them to use the gun. They're not afraid that they won't be able to show how to use it, because if they actually care and respect the power of the weapon, they're going to go through the normal process.
Because Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene and people like that probably wouldn't. Pass.
Well, they would, exactly. Well, and instead they want to take photographs with their 2-year-old kids holding AR-15s, and it's okay, then we can't have a rational conversation. Okay,
right.
I'm trying to have a rational conversation. What I want to be is very respectful over your Second Amendment rights. I really do. But I also want to be respectful over kids in school from fearing that they're going to get shot and killed when they're trying to learn their ABCs. Okay. So we should be able to have that conversation without you idiots bragging about how your 2-year-old is holding an AR-15, because that's where you lose me. Okay. That's where we can no longer have rational conversations. And by the way, you want to have the rational conversation about a pandemic? Let's first agree that a pandemic is a serious freaking thing that we need to take very seriously and follow where the science goes. You want to have a conversation with me about should this small business be open versus this department store being open? I'll have a sensible conversation with you about where the closures are, why. I'm okay having that conversation, but do not gaslight me and then do the whole xenophobic thing and call it the China virus. That, then you're just an idiot. Then you're just a performative idiot, and I can't engage with you because you're not taking any of these issues seriously. Anyway, I digress.
No,
Dan
it's fine.
Goldman,
Ben, just real quick, that's also why I say often on this show, there's this Republican Party, they claim to be pro-life, but that's actually a mischaracterization of what they are. They're pro-forced birth because they don't care about these kids in schools on a weekly basis. It seems like now that there's a school shooting, and they could care less to pass any sort of common sense legislation to save children's lives. That party, the Republican Party, I want to say they're not pro-life, they're pro-forced birth.
Well, let's talk about framing for a second and talk about just like the crime issue, right? The crime was obviously a big thing that Republicans push. And in the lead up to the 2022 elections, the media was like, oh, the Democrats are going to get blown out because a lot of people say that crime is top of mind and that's going to crush the Democrats. When in fact, what it was revealed after the fact, when they dug into the data, is that by crime, a lot of Americans meant gun crime. A lot of Americans meant crime like school shootings. And those Americans voted against Republicans. I'm not saying the crime thing didn't work in certain areas, and it certainly did seem to work in places like New York State. However, on the whole, when people were worried about crime, lots of people were worried about gun violence. And that's why, it's smart for the Democrats to consistently go back to that. You want to pretend like you are the party against crime while you are letting guns go unfettered on our street. You want to act like you're the party against crime while you're telling us to not prosecute a criminal? Like, do you understand? You're in New York to protest the prosecution of a criminal, telling us that we're not good at prosecuting crime. I mean, the whole thing on its face is just completely absurd.
Then you go into Texas, where Abbott's saying that he's going to pardon the person who was convicted of murder, who killed a Black Lives Matter protester after the murder of George Floyd. And this person's the murderer who's convicted of murder by a jury. All of the text messages were like these disgusting racist messages using the most horrific racist language about how he premeditated was going to kill people at this protest, and then killed the person at the protest. And that is who Governor Abbott's like, I'm gonna pardon that person because the victim was there with the Black Lives Matter protester. So I'm going to pardon the murderer there. And then they go, well, where law and order? That's why, though, if you want to know why in these red states the crime is actually through the roof, is because they're not law and order. It's just performative BS that they say the words, and it's kind of like their approach to everything. If we don't test, then we won't know the results, right? So then we're good. So their whole law and order, if we just say the words, law and order, we're tough on crime. We are strong on crime. We are very tough on crime. You just say those words over and over again, and you don't actually come up with policies that address the root causes and that address how you actually stem the tide of crime. And that's why crime goes through the roof. All right, I digress. Dan Goldman, Congressmember Dan Goldman, who points out that as he was heading into these hearings, these MAGA Republicans, they were holding these anti-Semitic signs. So he asked one of the witnesses, what do you think about that sign? Play this clip.
Can I just reclaim my time, because I only have 20 seconds, and I want to mention that when I was walking in here today, there was a man outside with a sign, and I would just like to hold this sign up. You saw it, right? There's a Star of David with $2 signs and Soros. Would you say that's anti-Semitic?
That's 100% anti-Semitic, and it's disgusting.
Right.
It's disgusting.
I yield back my time.
And it is 100% the message that is being pushed by Republican leaders, that they are lying the same, this, like, they're using the Nazi lie to when the Jewish bankers did it, right? That's the exact thing that the MAGA Republicans are saying. It's the Nazi lie. The Jewish banker has funded Alvin Bragg to go and prosecute Donald Trump. That's who is the cause of this. And then they go, it's the Jewish banker Soros who funds all of these prosecutors. When Soros they haven't even had a conversation. Like, they don't even know each other. There's no link other than that Soros donated money to a group, and that group happened to not give money to Bragg, but support Alvin Bragg. And so because of that link, which you can link anybody to, they go, he's Soros funded. He's Soros funded. And not only that, they go even a step further. They will go on and they will say George Soros called up Alvin Bragg and told Alvin Bragg to do it. These are actual leaders in the Republican Party, and then they want to gaslight and they go, well, why is that anti-Semitic? That's not an anti-Semitic trope, and we've always talked about this on the network too. It's like, then you're so cowardly to even own it. Own your trash. Mm-hmm. If that's the way you're going, why are you a coward about it? You know exactly what you're doing. Then they go, oh, that's I never said.
That supporter there knew exactly what they're saying. That's for sure. That supporter knew exactly what they were saying. So it was good on Dan Goldman to call it out, because that is it's a natural fit for that Republican circus to have somebody who is just pointing the mirror back at Republicans. This is what you're telling me. This is what you mean when you say Soros. This is what you mean when you say Soros funded. And it's also, it's not only that these Republicans try to hide the crime and just say things like law and order. They're often the people committing the crimes themselves. And just in the same way that they scream pedo, 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 and then you see all these Republicans get busted for pedophilia all the time, because they're using those deflections to hide from their bad behavior. And they do the same things with law and order. There was a clip that, I hope everybody does go and see. I don't want to play it just because it's really so disgusting, but there was a clip that came out today that was obtained by the McCurtain Gazette News, and it was from McCurtain County, Oklahoma. I hope I'm saying that right, but it showed these officials, including the sheriff of the town, talking about hiring hitmen to assassinate local journalists. And in the tape, they were complaining that Black people now have the right to not be lynched. This was an open conversation. They were being recorded, and they go, yeah, I know a few hitmen who could take them out pretty easy, and they're pretty quiet about it. This is the sheriff speaking. And they do this and they say things like law and order to hide their own criminality and their own despicable behavior. This is happening in America today, and they're just becoming more brazen about it. It's exactly what happened in Texas. Murderer, he said he's going to kill the person. Guess what? Go free. There's no problems there. But that's happening every day across the country, and Republicans are covering it up.
And look, that's why I produced Killing County with Colin Kaepernick about what was taking place in Kevin McCarthy's district. You actually had the police in that district who were the drug dealers. They were dealing the drugs back into the community. And then when they were caught dealing the drugs, there was a mandatory minimum of 15 years. And the judge, who was a former cop, reduced the sentence to like 3 years or 5 years. And the cop was actually interviewed in the documentary we made. So if you haven't seen Killing County, check it out. It's on Hulu. And the cop said, yeah, I did it. And the cop said, I was attracted to go to Bakersfield because it had a reputation of police killing people. That's why the cop said he went to Bakersfield in the first place, because of the reputation, the reputation that it had. And then we had audio we found of the sheriff basically saying you should kill the victims because it's cheaper to pay off a family of a dead person than to pay off someone who's paralyzed. Like, we have that audio that we played. And again, Republican sheriff out there. Want to talk about the Dominion defamation case against Fox. It's set to go to trial on Tuesday. There was some conversations that settlement communications were taking place, and by some communications, the Wall Street Journal reported that, owned by Rupert Murdoch, who also owns Fox. So Rupert Murdoch. I wonder who the source was about that, and I did a hot take on it, and everybody should. And I broke down what was likely going on in the settlement communications there. And I said the hardest part that I think is going to stop this case from settling is not the money. I thought the hardest part is going to be that Fox is facing all these other lawsuits. They're facing a lawsuit from Smartmatic, another election company who they defamed. Fox is potentially facing a lawsuit from its shareholders for disinformation. So if Fox admits to liability, which Dominion will absolutely require Fox to do, I think, in any settlement, Fox will lose all these other cases, and then there'll be a whole floodgates opening up of all of these other lawsuits that will even crush them more than this case. So what I said, and some people were surprised about what I said I thought that Dominion, though, in terms of the monetary amount, would settle the case for $500 million. And people were like, no, Ben, what are you talking about? And I said, well, if you look at Dominion's financials, they're making about $40 to $50 million a year. And I think that's a high estimate. So if you factor in that Dominion never services anybody in the, never does anything in the future, and you gave them 10 years worth of like Fox paying completely for what Dominion would make over the course of 10 years, that equals $500 million, right? If you did it for 20 years, you'd get $1 billion. And so, and if you did it 30, right, you could go on and so forth. That's why the $1.6 billion number is basically, 30 plus years of lost income. And I think the problem with that, to me, is not what the jury will do. I think the jury will award that amount. I worry that a 10-year, 15-year appellate process of appeals will ultimately lower the amount to more like 10 to 20 years versus 30 to 50 years of earnings. And so when I say I think 500 to 750, I want them to get $2 billion. I don't want Dominion to settle at all. Let me be very, very clear. But just so you know where those numbers even come from, I want to, in a very sober way, have these real conversations about where I'm pulling these numbers from. Even though I like the 1.6 billion number, I think a jury may award $5 billion. But what a lot of people don't realize is after these big jury awards that you read about in the news, what often you don't hear about is what happens after when there's an appeals process, and they often get reduced by the judge or the court of appeals to something a little bit more like 10x of what earnings are, 15x, and not the 50x numbers that the jurors. But to me, and this is what I was hoping that Dominion would be considering, is really the principle of this all, because there's more money at stake. And I am really happy that Dominion is not settling this case. Yeah. I recognize that Dominion has investors, though, and they have shareholders. I don't know what's going on in their inner workings. So I don't want to gloss over that they have to make business calls sometimes. Mm-hmm. But I think that they've done such an incredible job, and shout out to their legal team. This is one of the most brilliant litigation efforts I have ever seen. And then I think like this is LeBron James litigation, the documents they've got, the discovery, how they've called out Fox for all these other lies. The fact that now that you're on trial, the judge also has sanctioned Fox and appointed a special master that concurrently with the trial is doing an investigation into Fox for Fox's suppression of key facts. Like the day before trial, this blockbuster audio came out. We played it on the last podcast from Abby Grossberg, who was a former executive producer at Tucker Show, and Maria Bartiromo, where during these pre-interviews, like Rudy Giuliani and other Trump administration officials, they'd go like, all right, off the record, we have no evidence to support any of what we're talking about, but basically just let us go on and it'll be cool, which basically proves the actual, it was basically with one Trump administration official, it was like that bad, with others, slight exaggeration by me, but pretty close to what was going down in those audio tapes. And by the way, Abby Grossberg, this executive producer at Tucker, and Maria Bartiromo, she said that when she would go into the Tucker office for the first day of work, he had photographs of Nancy Pelosi in bathing suits all around the office. Like, just to think about like what maniacs these people are and the type of work environment they have. That's what they do all day, is post photos of Nancy Pelosi in a bathing suit so that they could, I don't know, ridicule her, or I think that's what she said, that they would ridicule her. I think she looks great, number one, but number two, how freaking misogynistic and weird
bizarre behavior.
It's a fascist frat house over at Fox. That's
fascist frat house over at Fox. Say that 5 times fast, Ben.
Fascist frat house over at Fox. Fascist.
So
frat,
it looks
but
like trials starting. What these settlement communications normally look like is usually have a mediator, like a retired judge, who shuttles offers between the parties. And, cases often settle. Sometimes you're like, they've gone this far, why would it settle now? Actually, lots of cases settle at the courthouse steps. It's a very common thing that right before opening statements or right after opening statements, cases settle.
Is it just like, Ben, because people are really feeling the heat? They're like, oh, this is really real now. Okay, it's real.
There's I believe it's a John Travolta movie, which and I think, John Travolta. Yeah. I think it was shot in the LA courthouse too. And in the movie, you can see it play out, Jordy, to your point. The trial's about to start. They call in the jury, and John Travolta, it's the opening scene of the movie. And Travolta is the plaintiff's lawyer and looks at the defense lawyer and writes a note and goes, "You going to settle yet?" And they said, And then the case involves a paraplegic victim who was in a very serious accident. And then Travolta's like, "Are you sure?" And then they go in, and then Travolta has his associate attorney go in and then wheel in the paraplegic client who's been injured. And then, you see the jury look like, oh my God, like they're looking at the victim. They're looking at the big bad corporation sitting at the defense table. And they're like, and you see the lawyers for the defense start to panic. And then Travolta's character writes another note, like, are you ready to settle yet? And they shake their heads, no. And then you see the client sitting there who's like, obviously, very, very, very injured and is like on a feeding tube, and then the jury starts crying before even the opening statement, and like the jury starts to cry before the statement's even given. And then Travolta looks at the defense table. He goes, "Last chance to get it," and then he goes up to give the opening statement, and then they go, "We've got a settlement," or whatever the number is. And so then Travolta's like, "Court, we've got a settlement." And I thought that scene actually,
was this movie a civil action?
Yeah, civil action. I think that's
deep cut, Ben. That's a deep cut. A great cast now. I watched the movie too.
John
Travolta, Robert Duvall, William H. Macy, Tony Shalhoub, Bruce Norris, John Lithgow, James Gandolfini. This is like
wow. By the way, I thought Ben's anecdote there was going to be like 5 seconds. He's about to go into the whole plot of the second chapter of the movie.
Yeah, we almost made it to act. We almost made it to act 2.
I thought it was a good. I'm sorry. I thought it was a good story. Sure.
No, I'm intrigued.
Story right there.
I'm intrigued though.
I am.
So the equivalent of what's going to happen here, though, is, remember, Dominion's already won partial summary judgment. So the judge has already made a determination that the statements made by Fox are false. So even before Dominion gives their opening statement, the judge is likely going to read an instruction to the jury using the analogy I gave from a civil action. And the judge is going to say, "I have already made a finding that the statements spread by Fox are false. What's left for you to decide is whether Fox acted with actual malice." So then Dominion's going to go up and they're going to give the opening statement that has all of these text messages from Rupert Murdoch and Lachlan Murdoch and Tucker, where they're like, "Yeah, we hate our viewers. We care about the ratings, though. We're going to lie. Screw this. Like, we got to fire anybody who doesn't go along with our lies." Like, those messages were horrific. And then in the opening, the lawyer's going to say, "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what you are going to see is that these statements are the very definition of actual malice. They knew what they were doing. And just remember what Rupert Murdoch said at his deposition. All he cares about is the green." So this company's reputation was defamed. The United States democracy was put in peril because Rupert Murdoch cared about the green. That is actual malice. And then they're going to say, "You ready to settle now?" Because the jury's going to, and then Fox is going to go up. And what's Fox going to say? we are a news outlet, and in our news, I mean,
who's the attorney for Fox? Wow, that guy sounds rough.
they're going to say we were just reporting the news. So when we put Sidney Powell, and Sidney Powell said that she got her information, we thought that was a newsworthy story. It wasn't our obligation to ask Sidney Powell if her source for her information was from someone who claims they can time travel. We weren't responsible for that. I mean, that's actually
we did a lot of impressions on tonight's show. That was a really good one too. But
yeah,
well, and again, I got it. Malice in the MAGA Palace. Frame
you
it.
Got to keep it spicy. You got to keep it spicy at the end.
Here's what I would want, though, just before we get off this. Like, if there were to be a settlement, like, this would be my dream for all those hosts, for Tucker Carlson, for Laura Ingraham, for Sean Hannity, to all them every single night for like years. I'll take 1 year if it has to be the beginning of their show, saying a court deemed this show to be full of lies and propaganda, and we cannot confirm that, you know, what you hear on the show is the truth. Now into our broadcast, like, you know, just to have to say something like that, a disclaimer at the beginning of their show. Hilarious. I do not want them, if they settle, I don't want them to settle for anything less, because I think they need to be put on blast. And you're right, this is more than just about Dominion. This is more than about Smartmatic. This is about the responsibility of the press. This is about propaganda. This is about really the safety and the foundation of our democracy, and people using the Constitution in order to exploit it. People exploiting the Constitution by saying, what, free speech? I could say whatever I want, right? It doesn't matter. I could say whatever I want. But no, that's not the case here. That's not the case. They lied repeatedly. They knew they were lying. They spread disinformation. Even after study showed that they were lying, they fired the people who actually told the truth on the network. And those were the people who were the worst. Oh, that fact checker got the call right. Get him out of here. That person tweeted that fact check that the election actually was fine. What the hell is this person doing? They're ruining our reputation. It's so obvious here that if there was any case that was going to be a crushing blow to Fox, I know the bar is high to prove malice in a case like this, but you could not have better evidence here to go against Fox.
And look, the lie, I always thought the liability is a slam dunk. Actual malice in this case, no, I think is overwhelmingly easy. I always thought the hardest part is just going to be the damages on appeals. Not the damages in front of this jury, the damages on appeals. And that process can take, you know, about 10 years to play out. That's been my only concern about this. And that's the only thing that could possibly be driving a Dominion settlement. But I'll tell you also what's not going to settle, which is the E. Jean Carroll defamation and civil rape case against Donald Trump. And Trump tried to delay again. Trump asked for a cooling off period. Yes, Donald Trump said, he called it a cooling off period. I need a cooling off period because there was a circus-like atmosphere surrounding the criminal arraignment that took place. And he blamed the Manhattan District Attorney for the circus-like atmosphere. And E. Jean Carroll's lawyers were like, you created that environment. Mm-hmm. And by the way, about 20 minutes before you filed this motion, you were on Tucker Carlson attacking the district attorney again and creating more of a circus-like atmosphere. And the Judge Lewis Kaplan, like, I'm going to do a hot take on this, so I won't ruin my hot take, but the judge absolutely slammed Donald Trump and Trump's lawyer and called out all the other criminal cases that Donald Trump's being investigated for and said, you're not getting a cooling off period. Trial is starting April 25th. So folks, I just want you to keep this in mind. Over the next 2-3 weeks, you're going to have Dominion's defamation case against Fox on the one hand, and then you're going to have E. Jean Carroll's rape trial against Donald Trump on the other hand, that are going to be going. One's in Delaware Superior Court Dominion, and E. Jean Carroll's is in New York, Brett.
I just wanted to say my favorite part of the statements from Judge Kaplan when he wrote, he was calling out Trump for his delay tactics and for, saying I need a cooling off period right now. But I love this line where he wrote, events happen during postponements. Sometimes they can make matters worse. And the way I interpreted that as like, you think the New York, you think the Manhattan DA coming after you is the only thing that's coming your way? Dude, you might get indicted in Georgia. You're probably going to get indicted federally. Like, this is just the beginning. So if you're looking for a cooling off period, guess what? Events happen during postponement. So put this thing off. It's going to be way worse for you in a few months than it is for you right now. So you might actually want to do it as soon as possible.
I've been pretty right on my predictions. I think that Donald Trump will be indicted by Fani Willis in Fulton County end of May, before July. So that's my time period. I have a great degree of confidence in that, but we will see. Can I ask the Meidas Mighty all watching this for a favor, please? Two favors. The first favor is wherever you get your audio podcasts. So if you're watching this on YouTube, please search MeidasTouch Podcast after this is over. And subscribe wherever your audio podcast device is. So if you use Spotify or Apple or Google or Anchor, whichever one you use, just search MeidasTouch Podcast, hit subscribe, and leave a 5-star review. There's still 10,000 people watching this live concurrently right now, and we've been getting usually close to 200,000-300,000 people will watch on YouTube. So I want to see all of you. Please subscribe on the audio podcast.
We're talking to you. Yeah, we're talking to you.
That goes a long way. It's super simple. It's super simple to do. For all of our audio podcast listeners, make sure you're subscribed to the MeidasTouch YouTube channel. So that's my first request. Okay, my second request, and if you can't do this, do not worry at all, not one bit. But if you are able to fund the network, go to patreon.com/MeidasTouch, patreon.com/MeidasTouch. We don't have outside investors here. It's an interesting model, perhaps not the greatest business model. But the way we do this is through Patreon and through the sponsors that you see. And we have one tier called honorary producers, where your name appears on the podcast. There's a lot of other great membership tiers as well. But if you have the means, again, don't worry if you can. Otherwise, just share the videos. That goes a long way. Spread the message. But if you are able to, patreon.com/MeidasTouch, it really does go a long way to help fund the videos, the production quality, how the network is run. But again, no worries if you can't. You can check out our merch at store.MeidasTouch.com, the best pro-democracy gear, 100% made in the United States, 100% union made. That's store.MeidasTouch.com. Get the gear and gear up for the summer. And then finally, I just want to thank all of you for watching and listening to this. None of this is possible without the support and the power of the Meidas Mighty. This isn't just like a random network. This isn't some top-down thing. This is a real movement fueled by you. And it is an honor for me and my two brothers and everybody else in the network, all of our hosts and presenters and anchors, to really just be in this fight for our democracy with you. When anyone asks me, well, what's the secret sauce in MeidasTouch? I go, it's easy. It's the Meidas Mighty. And so we're so grateful for all of your support. And really, you mean the world to us. We love you. Thank you very, very much. Thanks everyone for watching this episode. I've had such a great time on this episode. I've lost track of time. I've been enjoying this.
One of my favorite ones today.
I've been enjoying this so much. So thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time on the MeidasTouch Podcast.
Shout out to the Meidas Mighty. Lock him up! Indictment season is upon us. Celebrate with the new Indictment Season t-shirt and v-neck exclusively at store.MeidasTouch.com.